Mm, mm, mm.
How was dance day?
Did rugby friends there?
The
Because
roll is being shined and filled with coal.
man,
So I can't imagine that any of us would not want to be winning at our relationships. And yet the reality is we don't win at every relationship. We struggle with relationships. And our tendency is to think, that just everybody knows how to be a friend. Everybody knows how to be a brother. Everybody knows how to be a husband or a wife or a mother. But the reality is we don't all know how to do that. And we've got to figure out how can we win at each of those relationships. And the holidays seem to just amplify our struggles when it comes to relationships. And it just kind of brings out some of the worst. And so over the next several weeks, and then as we get into January and February, we're going to spend time talking about how can we win at relationships? How can we do well when it comes to our relationships? Now, before we talk about relationships today, I want to tell you a couple things that are going on around LCBC, things that are important to you, things that will impact you, some of you more than others, some not at all, but I want to tell you some things that are coming up in 2020. And to do that, let me just remind you of why we even exist as a church. It's important that you understand this is why we do what we do as a church. Our purpose is to introduce more people to Jesus and together fully follow him. We talk about introducing people to Jesus because we really believe Jesus is the answer to everything that's going on in life. Jesus is the answer to eternity. When you figure out what happens when I die, what about eternity? When you try to figure out, okay, how do I live my life well today? Jesus is the answer for eternity, but he's also the answer for how to do life well today. And so we want to introduce people to Jesus because he changes lives. And then together we want to fully follow him. And we try and we thrive and we do what we can and strive to just fully follow him. And because it's when we do that that our lives truly begin to change. So that's why we exist as a church. Now, over the years, we've been doing that, and you've been doing that, and introducing more and more people to Jesus. And so we've gone from one location with about 150 people to now 14 locations and 16,000 people kind of across our region. And so these are all of our locations across kind of central, eastern Pennsylvania, and real cool to see what God has been doing. And want to tell you about a couple exciting things that I think are happening in 2020. Two of them are locations that will be opening up in March. And so the first one is West Shore, and we opened West Shore about a year ago. They've been meeting in a school on the West Shore of Harrisburg, kind of Mechanicsburg area, and a group of about 400 people have been setting up, tearing down every weekend at a school. Been working on a permanent facility for them on the West Shore, and that will be open March 1st. And we are really excited about that. We think this group of 400 has the potential to grow to 1,000, 1,500 or more. And so excited about West Shore and what's going to happen there. Not only West Shore happening, and these are all off of the Harrisburg campus has really been critical in launching these locations. So one is West Shore, but there's another group of people that have been at the Harrisburg campus that live a long way. They've been driving a long way to Harrisburg every weekend. And so they started meeting together as a small group and said, what if we just start meeting? It's northern Dauphin area where they're actually located, and a lot of them driving more than an hour, 45 minutes to an hour to come down to our Harrisburg location. And they said, could we ever have a location up in northern Dauphin area? And if you've been in the northern Dauphin area, there's not a whole lot there. And so we said, well, if you can pull a group of people together, then we would talk about it. So for the last 8 months, they've been pulling people together at the local YMCA, and that group has grown to about 40 or 50 people every weekend. And so we actually have leased them kind of a storefront up in that area, similar to what we have in Cole Township. This is Cole Township's location. And March 1st, this should be ready. And so what we anticipate is that group of 40 or 50 150, can grow to 100, 150 or more in that area. So that happens the 1st of March as well. So those are two things that are happening and we're working towards, and we're very excited about those. Just fun to see what's going on regionally. A couple of other things that we're interested in. And what we think could happen next year, September, October. One is in the area of Wyomissing. And in Wyomissing, we feel like that's an area that there's kind of a gap between our Berks location, our Ephrata location, and a lot of people in the Wyomissing area. We feel like we could make an impact there. And so we would like next September, October to be able to open something up in a school initially and just watch and see what happens there. And if it continues to grow, then have a location there. Second area that we'd like to see is West York. And there's a gap between our York location, our Hanover location. We feel like we could do well in West York. These rings are about 20 minutes out from each of our locations, and we just found if we go about 20 minutes out, then we seem to do best. And so we're excited about that possibility. Fun to see what God is doing. Ruth and I had opportunity 2 weeks ago to be at our Hazleton location, our Columbia Montour and Cole Township locations, and you guys at those locations are knocking it out. It was very cool to be there, see what God is doing, your excitement for what God is doing, and thrilled to be there with you for those, and very excited about what God is doing around our region. And can I just say to you, the reason why this has all happened is because all of us are willing to step back and say, you know what, it's not about me. And so many times we get hung up in church and think church is all about me and meet my needs, take care of me. And what you at LCBC just have this innate sense that it's not about me, it's about others. And so what started in Mannheim with a group of 150 people or so and realizing it's not about us, it's about others. And so that's just kind of radiated out and made an impact and is making an impact across this region, and very cool. So I would say specifically to Mannheim, way to go for starting this whole process and being willing to be a part of that. And then as it just continues to fan out and grow out for each of us, as we say, you know what, it's not about me, it's about others, and it's about introducing other people to Jesus Christ. The other way that all this is possible is just because of your generosity and your willingness to say, I believe in this so much. I believe in the fact that Jesus truly is the answer, that introducing other people to Jesus is critical, that you've been willing to give financially to make this happen. And this doesn't happen for free. There's a cost to it. And so all of these locations are because you've been generous financially, these new locations because you've been generous financially. And so I would just say, way to go. You are making a difference. And what we're experiencing is something that most other churches don't experience. And what I always find fascinating for us is we get used to it. We think, oh, this is normal. This is what everybody experiences, but it's not normal. What you guys are doing is not normal. What is becoming the norm is one church opening up a couple of campuses. And so over the last several years, there are probably anywhere between, the numbers are between 5,000 and 8,000 churches across the country that now have multiple locations. But pretty much all of them have maybe 2, maybe 3 at the most locations. There's just a handful of churches, and when I say handful, 4 or 5 that have 14, 15, 20 or more locations. And so what we're experiencing and what God is allowing us to experience is very unique and it's very exciting, and you're a part of that. And you make that happen. So I would just say, way to go for being a part of all of that. So let's jump into relationships. And let's talk about what God is doing in the area of our relationships. Now, as I talk about relationships, I just first of all want you to understand what God has designed for you and me to experience. First of all, I want you to understand what Jesus says he wants for you. As we talk about introducing people to Jesus, you say, why do we need to? Well, because Jesus has plans for each and every one of us. And this is what Jesus said his desire is for each and every one of us. Jesus said, my purpose for coming into the world is to give you a rich and a satisfying life. Jesus said, my purpose, the reason why I've come is to give you a rich and satisfying life. Now, don't make the mistake of thinking rich and satisfying means that you're going to be wealthy financially. He doesn't talk about that. Riches and satisfaction, he's not talking about financial wealth. He's not saying we're going to be a lot of rich people. We go, yes, okay, this is going to be great. That's not what he's talking about. He's not opposed to that, but that's not what he's saying. When Jesus says he wants to give us a rich and satisfying life, he's talking about a life that's rich and satisfying in the area of peace, that's rich and satisfying in the area of just joy and contentment and kindness and gentleness and compassion. He says, that's what I want you to experience in your life. And not all of us experience that. If you really step back and evaluate, do you experience joy? Do you experience contentment? Do you experience satisfaction? Do you experience this kindness? And the way we've talked about this as a church, we said what Jesus is really saying is he wants us to experience remarkable lives. Remarkable not because we are rich financially, but remarkable because the idea of remarkable is that you stand out from others. And the way we stand out from others, Jesus is saying, is because in the middle of chaos, in the middle of difficulty, in the middle of everything that's going on around us, when everybody else is up in arms, when everybody else is kind of losing it, he says, I want you to experience a life that's rich in peace and rich in joy and rich in satisfaction and contentment and kindness and compassion. And if we were that way, we would stand out. Other people would say, what's with you? You're not normal. That's not what everybody else is experiencing. That's a remarkable life. Now, as we talk about a remarkable life, we've kind of stepped back as a church and said, so what are the things that are keeping us from experiencing this? Because we know not all of us are experiencing this. We said, what are the hindrances? What are the things that are keeping us from experiencing this? And so last year we focused on finances because 89% of us, the surveys say nationally, 89% of us, our finances are a wreck, and there's no way we can experience joy and peace and satisfaction and commitment when our finances are a wreck. So we said, let's focus on that. So 2019, we focused on finances because we believed that that's one of the hindrances to us being able to experience a remarkable life. And then there's a second area that we also believe keeps us from experiencing a remarkable life. And this is going to be our focus for 2020. And that's our relationships. When our relationships are a disaster, when our relationships are crumbling around us, when we're at odds with the people in our lives, there's no way we can experience this rich and satisfying life. We can't be remarkable. We don't experience joy. We don't experience the satisfaction, peace that Jesus says he wants for us. And so that's our goal. And so let me tell you specifically what our goal is for 2020. Our leaders have said this is what we want to happen in 2020. Our goal is 10,000 people will grab a hold of a tool that will actually change our relationships. 10,000 of us grabbing hold of a tool that we think can change our relationships. And I'm going to tell you about that tool in just a minute, but the goal is to say, man, if all of us could jump in and be a part of this and our relationships would change, then we would be able to experience this remarkable life that Jesus is talking about. And so I'm going to introduce that tool to you today. And the reason we're focusing on relationships is because they matter. They truly do matter. The Bible talks a lot. God talks a lot about relationships. Proverbs talks a lot about relationships. Proverbs 17:17 says, a friend is always loyal and a brother is born to help in time of need. That's relationships. Gotta have friends. Gotta have family. Gotta have people around us if we're gonna do well in life. Proverbs 18 says it this way, there are friends who destroy each other, but a real friend sticks closer than a brother. Again, that's relationships. And they can either tear you down or they can help you experience a remarkable life. One other that I'll give you, Proverbs 17:20, walk with the wise and become wise. Associate with fools and you're gonna get into trouble. And again, that's all about relationships. So let me introduce this tool to you. You've got an outline in your program. If you haven't pulled it out yet, you want to pull it out. You want to follow along because this is a tool, again, that could change your life, that could change your relationships. The tool that I want to introduce you to was developed by a man named Dr. John Van Epp. And over the past 6 months, John has become a friend of ours at LCBC. He's the president, he's the founder of an organization called Love Thinks. And because of his work, because of his expertise in the area of relationships, he's been kind of all over just the news and different places. He's been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Time Magazine, Psychology Today, O Magazine, Cosmopolitan. He's appeared on the CBS Early Show, Good Morning America, Fox News, and Focus on the Family. And when I look at that list, I go, oh man, that is maybe the only bipartisan thing, relationships, that I've seen because he's just kind of every area, every spectrum, he's there and he's involved. And the tool that Dr. John Van Epp has developed, he actually calls it the relational attachment model. It's a tool that he developed after years and years of research and study. And when I first heard about this tool, I said, man, this is brilliant. And we've got to teach our people at LCBC about this. And the reason why I like it so much is it makes sense. It's very intuitive. It's not complicated. I mean, I can understand it. And I go, if I can understand it, then you can understand it. It's so uncomplicated, so understandable that come January, we're actually going to teach our kids all of this in our kid ministries. We're going to teach our students this in student ministries. All of us are going to go through this. It's proven over time. It's been around for years and years. And I go, why did we not know about this before? And it works in every kind of relationship. And here's the cool thing. It's actually biblical. And John, when he was doing his research for this, he pulled right from the Bible. And so again, grab the outline. I want to jump in and kind of explain this model to you. Now, in this model, there's actually a belief that there are 5 bonds that drive all of our relationships. The bond of knowing, trusting, relying, commitment, and touch. And all of these bonds shape and drive our relationships. And when you begin to understand this model, you can look at each and every one of your relationships and figure out, okay, why is it working? Why is it not? Where do I need to change to make it better? Where do I need to change? Why is it failing? And it begins to help you understand. And so today I only have time to introduce the idea to you. We're only going to scratch the surface. In January, we'll hit it in detail, but it's a model that works in any relationship. And when I say any relationship, I mean any relationship. It's a mother with her son. It's a dad with his daughter. It's a husband with a wife. It's a friend with a friend. It's a coworker with another coworker. It's a neighbor with a neighbor, roommate with a roommate. Whatever you come up with, it works in each and every one of those relationships. And so there are these 5 bonds. Each of these lines represent, I'm going to call them a slider. And when I call it a slider, I mean that they're almost dials that you can move up and down or levers that you can move up and down. These sliders are kind of like if in each of our rooms we have a soundboard. And if you were able to go back and look at the soundboard, there are, I will call them again, sliders on those boards. And when they move those sliders, it changes the sound in the room. Now, on their boards, there may be dozens and dozens of these sliders, but maybe one controls the bass and the level of bass, the other the level of treble. Maybe one pulls out the guitars more, another pulls out the piano or the organ more. And so you've got all these different levers. And I know some of you right now are thinking, you know, David, we only need one lever, and that's a volume lever, and I would love to get back there and just pull it way down. And I would say that's why we don't let you back there, because we like it way up. And so we're going to keep it up here. But there's these levers. When I was in college at Texas Tech, and this was years ago, everybody in the dorm had stereos, and all of the stereos back then had these levers on them that could control your volumes, and so you could control the bass and the treble and all of that. And if you really wanted to mess with somebody, you'd go into their room and you'd change all their levers, and they'd go ballistic, and that would kind of throw them off. So each of these are levers that are impacting relationships. And so let me describe to you each of these different bonds that are impacting our relationships. The first one is know, or knowing. And when we talk about knowing, what we're all actually saying is it indicates how factually you know another person. What are the facts about that other person? And the way we get facts is just by interaction. We talk to each other. The way we develop factual knowledge, we start with no knowledge, and you meet somebody, but you begin to gain some facts about them. You talk to them. You interact with them. You have experiences with them. You watch them. Diverse situations where you watch them when they're angry. You watch them when they're happy. You watch them in conflict. And as you watch them, the factual knowledge that you have about that person begins to go up. And you go, okay, I'm understanding, I'm seeing things about that person. And so that's what the area of knowledge is. And with every relationship, you are building a bank of knowledge about them, which affects the other bonds. The second bond is that of trust. And the idea of trust is just kind of the confidence that you feel in the other person based on what you think or believe about them. Now, this is interesting because you trust another person, and it's not so much on what you know about them, it's on what you think or believe about them. And so you may meet somebody, you may not know them well, but you make judgments very quickly, and you go, I think they're amazing. And you assign them a high level of trust. This is the kind of situation where, let's say you meet somebody at the gym. You don't know them, but you've met somebody at the gym, you've seen them work out, and you notice that they're there all the time, so they're very punctual, they're very consistent, they're disciplined. You notice the way they dress, the way their hair is done. Maybe you even notice what they drive in the parking lot, and so you think you know them, and so you assign knowledge to them, and then because of what you know about them in the gym, you think, oh, this person is very trustworthy. I could trust myself with a relationship, in a relationship with that person. But the fascinating thing is, you don't really know that person that well. You have limited knowledge. You only know them in the gym. But you don't know what they're like at home. You don't know what they're like at work. You don't know what they're like in other relationships. So you don't know them as well as you think. But you have assigned a level of trust for them where you said, oh man, they're a great person. And I trust them implicitly with my relationships. And this is why sometimes you'll get in a relationship with somebody that you think they're amazing. You think they're great. And all of your friends, and so you've given them a high level of trust in your life. And all of your friends and all of your family, they're going, oh, no, you don't know that person as well as you think. You shouldn't trust them at all. And you go, I can't believe it. Why not? I trust them. Well, it's because you don't know them as well as you think. You've assigned a high level of trust. Everybody else says, no, we're not going to go that far. We're not going to trust them that much. And so you pull back. And again, it's all based on what you believe, this level of trust. It's all based on your intuition, what you think, your opinion about the other person. The third area is one of reliance. And this is based off of how much do I rely on the other person to meet my needs, and how much do I meet their needs. You get in a relationship, and all of a sudden, they begin to meet certain needs for you. Maybe it's the need for companionship. You say, I just need a friend. I'm lonely. I just need to be around somebody else. And so all of a sudden, you begin to rely on them for compassion. Or maybe it's status, and every time you're around that person, they're the kind of person everybody else notices, and nobody notices you. But when you're with them, everybody notices you, and so all of a sudden your reliance goes up because you need status, and they're the ones that deliver it. Or maybe it's just financial security, and then somehow they give you financial security, and you develop a sense of reliance on them. They develop a sense of reliance on you, and the reliance lever or slider begins to go up, and just because you're depending on one another. And that's the bond of reliance. And the fourth is one of commitment. Commitment really just comes down to the status of the relationship or the degree of loyalty, whether it's obligation, that they're going to show up when you need them, responsibility to the other person. And so when I say status of the relationship, when you first meet, you're acquaintances, and there's not much commitment when it comes to acquaintances. But as you get to know each other more, then you become more than acquaintances, you become friends. If it's a guy-girl relationship, maybe you start dating. Maybe you're not just dating, but you actually begin to, I was going to say go steady. I don't know that even happens anymore. I'm dating myself on that one. So let's say you get engaged. Let's just jump to that one. And you get engaged. Maybe you're married, but the level of commitment actually begins to go up very high. And so the status shows commitment. And then also just, can you trust the other person to show up when you need them? Are you a priority in their life? Are they a priority in your life? And here's what's fascinating. Your level of commitment may be high. You'd say, you know what, I would show up anywhere, anytime to be with that person, to help that person. They may say, it's a great relationship, I enjoy them, but if they get into trouble, I'm out of here. That's why you find yourself in relationships and you think you've got all these friends, and to you it's highly committed, everybody's highly committed to you, and then all of a sudden, you get yourself into trouble. You do something stupid, maybe your health fails, you find yourself in a tough situation, and you look around, you go, where were all my friends? And they never were that committed to you. You were committed to them, but they weren't to you, and so the commitment level wasn't as strong as you thought it may be, which is why we get burned in relationships, because the commitment wasn't as high as we thought it maybe was. Now, the last one is touch, and touch is pretty obvious. It really just comes down to how much touch do you experience in the relationships, and depending on the relationship, it can be anything from just kind of hugs or basic expressions of affection to actual sexual activity, and this is one that really begins to develop a sense of closeness in that relationship. If it's a dating guy-girl relationship, then sexual activity, and there's all kinds of affection and chemistry that's going on in the area of touch. And so every relationship has these 5 bonds that are at play, and you can adjust the levels on all of these, and as you adjust the levels, it affects the relationships. It changes the dynamics of your relationships. And the interesting thing is we can kind of control this. We have control of what's going on in our relationships as we begin to maneuver and move these levers. Now, let me describe a relationship to you, just so you understand how this actually works. And so I'll use the closest relationship I have. That's the relationship that I have with Ruth, my wife. So when Ruth and I first met, Ruth and I both went to Texas Tech University. And when we met, I was a junior, she was a freshman. I was working in the dorm as a resident assistant. The dorm that we lived in shared the same dining room, and so we had about 1,000 people that ate in the same dining room. And my junior year, and I noticed Ruth right away at the beginning of my junior year. Several ways that I noticed her. One, I thought she was beautiful, still do think she's beautiful. Thought she was beautiful then, long, beautiful brown hair, big brown eyes, great smile. And so I noticed Ruth right away. And so there were some facts that I knew about her, and I just liked the facts that I knew about her. And so my knowledge of her began to rise. As I found out more about her, one of the ways that I found out about her is Texas Tech is a state school in Texas, and my freshman and sophomore years, I was not walking with God at all, and yet by my junior year, I'd kind of figured some things out, and my relationship with God had changed. And so I would go to church on Sundays my junior year of college. And what's interesting at Texas Tech, you could tell who had been to church and who hadn't been to church, because you'd go back to the dorm after church and eat lunch, and there would be nobody else there that looked like they had been awake more than 10 minutes eating lunch, and everybody else looked like they just crawled out of bed. But there was one person that I would notice every Sunday that had actually been to church. At least it looked like it, because she was dressed that way, and that was Ruth Tipton. I go, so she at least goes to church. And so my knowledge of her began to go up. And so right away, because of that, I assigned to her a high level of trust. I thought, okay, this is somebody that I need to get to know. This is somebody that I would love to spend time with. And so I guess it was maybe October of that semester, I asked Ruth Tipton to go to a football game with me. And I still remember the game. I think it was an SMU Texas Tech football game, because what I knew about her, I knew I wanted to be with her. I trusted kind of her character, I thought. And so I asked her to go to the game, and she told me no. My trust level went way down like this all of a sudden. And she said she had another date already to the game, and she said she'd love to go again, but I was like, yeah. So anyway, she dropped way down here. And then probably my knowledge, I realized I didn't know her as well as I thought I knew her. So that went way down. So we got to know each other more over the next, actually, year and a half. It was a year and a half before I asked her out again. But during that year and a half, I got to know her better. We had different interactions, just things that happened there at school. And so I got to know her more. And a year and a half later, I decided, okay, I'm going to take another shot at this. Now, it's interesting, depends on who you talk to. Ruth would say it took me a year and a half to build up my nerve to ask her out again. I just say it took a year and a half for her name to come back up to the top of the list. I mean, so anyway, knew more about her. My trust level was going up, decided to ask her to go out with me again. And this time she said yes. And our first date actually was a 12-hour long date. And I happened to be at that point speaking up at a camp that I had worked in Amarillo. Lubbock, where Texas Tech is about 2 hours from Amarillo. And so it was going to be a 2.5 hour ride in the car up there and back. It was going to be being at the banquet, me speaking at the banquet. It was a 12-hour ride. And during that 12-hour date, we got to know a lot more about each other. We got to know a ton about each other. And the trust level began to climb the more we got to know each other, to the point where we didn't say it to each other then, but we both said, I think this is the person for me that I'm going to marry. Now, because we were at college, then all of a sudden we developed a real high reliance on each other, because when you're in college that way, we would eat lunch together, we'd eat dinner together, we would study together, we were together all of the time. And so the reliance level came up. The commitment level, we went from being acquaintances to dating to very quickly said, you know what, maybe marriage is in the mix here. And so we began talking about that. From an area of touch, there was definitely a physical attraction there. Again, Ruth was beautiful and we loved each other, and so the level of touch began to climb. And so then as we talked about marriage, as we got to know each other more and that level of commitment, then she talked about, a year, 2 years away, whatever. And I was like, how about let's do this sooner and let's commit sooner. And so we decided 6 months away, let's go ahead and get married. So that began to happen. And so that's kind of the way our relationship evolved, and we were married, and as you get married, I think you know each other more, the trust level goes up, definitely reliance on each other, the commitment level was high, and actually once the marriage happens, then the physical touch level goes high as well. And like all couples, As you get married, then the physical touch area goes up, and the result of physical touch is what? It's children. And then all of a sudden, the physical touch goes way down as you look at that. And so it's kind of a snapshot of what was happening in our relationship together. Now, any of you could come up and you could describe pretty much any relationship. I could do this with any relationship I have. I could do it with my kids. I can do it with friends. I can do it with coworkers. You could do this with any relationship that you have. And what's beautiful about this model is as you look at it, you can figure out, okay, how are we doing in our relationship? Is it healthy? Is it not healthy? Are we doing well? Are we doing poorly? Are there some dangerous things that we need to watch for? And you could do this with any relationship. And even now for Ruth and I, we've got to work and making sure we know what's going on. It's very easy in the course of a busy schedule where you know each other, but all of a sudden there's things happening in each other's lives and we don't have time to talk about it, and you don't know each other as well as you thought. And then when you find out there's things going on that I didn't know about, then the trust level drops some, and you go, we've got to work on that. Or maybe I thought you were going to be there, but you weren't, so the reliance level drops, the commitment stays high, and the physical can go up or down. But these change, they're always moving. But again, the cool thing is it's like a mirror. And you can look at it and you can figure out, where am I? Where am I with my son? Where am I with my daughter? Why are we struggling so much in our relationship? Now, there's a couple laws that help drive this. I'm only going to give you 2 of them today. 2 laws that I just want you to know, because my desire for you, in January, we're going to jump into this in more detail. And this is a tool that I want you to be able to use in your relationship so that you can experience a remarkable life, the remarkable life that Jesus says he wants for you and me. But because we don't understand relationships as well as we think we do, we struggle in our relationships. This is a tool that can help us immensely. And so we're going to jump into this in more detail in January, but I want you to start using this way before January, and so you can use this even now as you look at it, figure out where you are in your relationships. But 2 laws that I want you to know about that kind of drive how this works. The first law is actually number 2 on your outline, and it's the law of slow leaks. The law of slow leaks really just says, you know what? You are going to go through periods of time where these things are going to leak. They're just going to, in time, they're just naturally going to begin to leak and go down. It's like the tires on your car, and I don't know where the air goes, but it goes out, and you just lose air, and they just begin to slowly leak, and they go down. And you need to know that happens, and that's natural. Now, the encouraging thing is, when leaks are happening in your relationship, you look at it and you go, oh no, what's wrong? What's our relationship? We're drifting further and further and further apart. What's wrong? Well, it's just slow leaks are happening, and so you've got to work to build back up the knowledge that you have of each other. You've got to work to build back up the trust that you have for one another. And so they just happen. But if you let them go unchecked, it will either flatten your relationship, where you begin to lose all of the air in that relationship, and the air goes out, and you're discouraged, and you're wondering what's going on. It flattens the relationship, or it may just totally blow it up completely. And you know how this works. You've seen it happen. Where you have friendships that you don't spend time with anymore, and the trust level goes down, all of a sudden you go, man, we were great friends, I don't know what happened. Or we were great friends, and I was really depending on them, I was trusting them, and it didn't come through, and over time you saw enough that you just go, relationship is gone. And it happens in marriages all the time. You get busy, and you're doing a lot of other things, and you don't work on these things, and all of a sudden your life and your marriage, you're going, I don't know what happened. We were close at one point. And I've never married a couple, been a part of their wedding, where they didn't love each other, where all of these levels weren't high. But something happened over time, and it's just normal. They leak, and you have to work at it. And I say all the time, marriage is hard work. You've got to constantly work at it. And it's amazing to me. I say to Ruth, we can go to bed one night, and I think we got the greatest marriage in the world, and then the next day, somehow you go, what happened here? And it's just the law of slow leaks. It happens. And so you constantly have to work to rebalance your levels and make sure that the marriage stays strong. The second level that I would give to you, and this is the one that I think is fascinating, it's just the law of the safe zone, and that's this, that every level should stay a little bit lower than the one to its left, meaning that if you don't have a lot of knowledge of another person, then you really shouldn't put a whole lot of trust in them, and you definitely shouldn't rely on them highly. Shouldn't even commit that much. In the area of physical touch, man, you don't know what you're getting into. You don't know that person well. And so the law of the safe zone says, don't let the levels to the right get higher than the levels to the left, and each one is just kind of corresponding. And until you get these levels right, you're setting yourself up for a disaster.
But what happens so often is we meet somebody again at the gym and we go, oh, I think I know them well. I mean, I've watched how they operate at the gym. I just feel like I know a lot about them, and so we assign a high level of trust. Not a whole lot of reliance there, not a whole lot of commitment there, but maybe there's a whole lot of physical touch going on. And you just look at it and go, okay, so this is a recipe for disaster. It's not going to work so well. And yet, again and again and again, I find people, we get ourselves into this trouble, and we go, how did this happen? I thought it was all so good. And it's like, well, the 5 bonds were not in proper order. So the law of safe zones says make sure that each corresponding level is just a little bit lower than the one to its left. Real simple. And again, we think we can figure this out, and we think, oh, we don't need this kind of instruction in our lives. And yet we find our relationships blowing up all the time. You see it in people around you. If I would ask you, describe some people in your lives who have gotten this wrong and get all messed up, and we could name people right and left. So I'm excited, real excited about kind of talking through this model in the future. And all I've done today is give you a picture of the model. It's called the RAM model, relational attachment model. It's called the RAM model. We're going to jump into it in more detail. All I've done is give you a picture. It's kind of like you and I were shopping for Christmas gifts, and we went online, and I just showed you pictures online, or maybe we went to the mall together, and you looked at things in the mall, and you said, yeah, that would be nice, and we talk about it, but we haven't bought it yet, and we haven't grabbed it, and you're not wearing it yet or using it yet. And I don't want you just to look at it online, and I don't want you just to shop and window shop at the mall and think, oh, wouldn't that be nice? I want you to go way beyond that, because that won't do anything to change your relationships, and it won't allow you to experience a remarkable life. What allows us to experience a remarkable life is to grab a hold of this tool, learn how to use it and use it well, and then all of a sudden our relationships change, and as our relationships begin to change, then we begin to experience a remarkable life. So let me give you a couple of action steps as we move closer and closer to January. Isn't it incredible? It feels like we just passed Thanksgiving, but you realize Christmas is like 2 weeks away. And so it's all coming very fast. So as we get into January, we're going to start a 6-week series we're calling Winning at Relationships. And that series is going to do everything we can to help you grab a hold of this tool, know how to use it well, and start using it regularly in your life so you can win at relationships. So here are the 2 action steps I've got for you. It's really pretty simple. 1, be here. Show up January, February, so you can be trained, you can get the tool, you can understand it. Make a commitment now. And I say make a commitment now because it's 2 hours of your schedule. I figure by the time you drive here, drive home, you're here for an hour and 15 minutes, 2 hours of your time. So make a commitment to do that now. You'll have all kinds of things that are interruptions that will keep you from this. Make the commitment now to be here. Be a part of it. Second action step. Decide now not to just show up, but actually maximize your understanding by being in a group. If you can get yourself into a group that is all talking about this, it'll give you a common language. It'll give other people to say, I'm not sure you're looking at it the right way, or, oh, you're doing great with that, or hang in there, move this level, move that level. Get into a group that can help you maximize the use of this tool, because again, this is something that will change your life. And so for 6 weeks, jump into a group. Number of ways that you can get into a group. One is just go to the website and go to Group Finder on our website, and you can get into a group that way. Maybe you're already in a group. We're asking all of our groups to study this, go through this. Again, your kids, students are going to go through this. So get into a group, an existing group. Maybe you start a brand new group of your own, but get into a group. Men's groups, women's groups, everybody's going to be doing this come January. You can go out in the atrium and find out about getting into a group. You can also, I think as you came in, you were given a form like this that tells you how to get involved in groups, but do that. And the reason this is so important is because if you're not winning at your relationships right now, you know it. I don't have to tell you. I don't have to describe it to you. You know you're not winning at your relationships. And you know it because you're experiencing pain. You know it because you're experiencing a lot of regret, and you wouldn't characterize your relationships as being filled with joy. You wouldn't characterize them as being fulfilling. And it's because you're not winning at your relationships. And so as we go through this together, I hope that it'll begin to change your life, because it's our relationships that shape us. It's our relationships that make us into who we are today. It builds us and forms us and shapes us into who we are today. I told you before, when I get on an airplane, I'm not looking to talk to everybody around me. And so I put on headphones right away and I listen to music. And if a certain song hits me the right way, then I'll hit replay and I'll listen to it again, and then I'll listen to it again and again and again and again and again. And Ruth and I used to, on airplanes, share the same device to listen to music. And she said, I cannot listen to this song one more time. And so now she has her own device and she listens to her own music. And so a few years back, we were traveling, and it was probably not long after Ruth's dad had passed away, not long after my mom had passed away, and there was a song that would hit me just right. Every time I would listen to it, it would just kind of nail me. And I would listen to it again and again and again and again, and I must have listened to this one hundreds of times, and I still, as I get on the plane, I'll go back and listen to this one again. I think the reason why it hit me is because it caused me to think about relationships, and it caused me to think about the relationships that shaped me into who I am today, good or bad. And it just kind of took me back to all of those relationships that built me. And so in just a moment, the bands are going to come out, and they're actually going to indulge me, and they're going to play this song. And here's my request for you. As they play this song, think about your relationships, the people that built into your life, the people that shaped you and made you the person that you are today. And realize people still are shaping you today, and they're building into your life today, making you who you are today. You're building into the lives of others. And if you and I could win at relationships, we might just be able to experience fully this remarkable life that Jesus says he came to give you, and he came to give me. Heavenly Father, oh man, I just first of all say thank you for loving us and caring enough about us that you sent Jesus into the world to take care of our eternity. The thought that we could spend eternity with you with all of our messes and all of our junk, that you would allow us to spend eternity with you in heaven because of what Jesus did on the cross, that's an incredible thing. God, thank you. But I also thank you that you're not just concerned about eternity, you're concerned about today as well, and you're concerned about our relationships. And you built us and designed us to live in relationships, and you know that we struggle. And so, Father, I ask that we could begin to win at our relationships. I thank you for John Van Eppen, this tool that he's designed, and just helps us be better at our relationships, and not even just be better, to actually win at our relationships. And so, Father, I ask in the days and the weeks and the months ahead that we can become masters with this tool, that we can use it and use it well, that we would begin to experience joy, we would begin to experience peace and contentment and fulfillment and kindness and a rich and satisfying life because of the relationships that we find ourselves in. And God, when we mess up, help us to figure out how to change. Guide us and direct us. Father, thank you for the people that have built into our lives, the people that have shaped us and made us who we are today. And I know as we think back to the past, some of us have great memories, some of us have awful memories. And how cool it is that you can take those awful experiences and you can turn them into something good. God, I'd ask you to do that today. And God, thank you. Thank you for loving us, and we love you. And I pray in Jesus' name, amen.